Major funding for KPBS Evening Edition has been made possible in part by Anderson Plumbing, Heating and Air, proud to support the mission of KPBS and privileged to serve San Diego clients. Anderson Plumbing, Heating and Air, helping homeowners maintain drain, heating, and cooling systems since 1978. And by the Conrad Prebys Foundation, Darlene Marco Shiley, and by the following. And by viewers like you. Thank you.
Good evening. It's Thursday, July 23rd. Thanks for joining us. I'm Maya Trabulsi. A new crackdown on COVID-19 comes to San Diego County. This as our region and the state try and combat the record-breaking virus. Late this afternoon, public health officials announced 7 more deaths and 501 new cases. The county's new task force is targeting businesses that aren't obeying state and local guidelines around reopening. Here's KPBS reporter John Carroll.
In the months since Governor Newsom issued the first stay-at-home order in March, it's been a difficult time for business owners with an ever-changing series of orders that can be hard to follow. But for the last several weeks, the orders for some businesses have been quite clear.
You got to decide what's doing the right thing.
For North Park fitness owner Lewis Wiggins, doing the right thing meant following the rules and closing his doors for the second time. Other gyms like Boulevard Fitness have followed a different path. They've decided to defy the county's health orders and stay open, insisting they can operate safely. Wiggins says he sympathizes. He's losing thousands of dollars a week, but
it would be that much devastating if, one of my members, one of my employees, myself caught COVID-19. So, I mean, when you put those two together, it's a pretty easy decision.
The situation with gyms in San Diego is playing itself out in various ways around the county, and that is more than likely what led yesterday to the announcement of a safe reopening compliance team. At Wednesday's county news conference, Supervisor Greg Cox said the team would take a carrot and stick approach. The configuration of the team is still being discussed between the county and cities, but when it's up and running, Cox said it will help where it can and enforce when it must.
We still have the stick and other tools available to us, and we will use them if necessary.
Lewis Wiggins says local and state governments now need to step up and do the right thing to help businesses that are following the rules.
The government's the one who's shutting us down, so you got to help us out. That's the bottom line. You got to help it from the top to the bottom. 2 times to close is just, it's hard.
And given the way things are going, it probably won't get any easier anytime soon. John Carroll, KPBS News.
A San Diego County Sheriff's deputy is facing dozen charges related to sex crimes involving underage victims. Jail records show 27-year-old Jalen Fleer was arrested last night by Chula Vista police. Investigators say the case came to light in April after tips to Crime Stoppers. The Sheriff's Department has not commented. Fleer is being held without bail pending arraignment. Community groups are talking with Carlsbad police about their tactics, but they say the conversations are far from over. KPBS reporter Eric Anderson says the violent arrest of a black man in June sparked calls for reform.
Community advocates are signaling hopeful notes in the wake of discussions with Carlsbad police about the June arrest of 27-year-old Marcel Cox Harsaw. Now, the video that you're seeing here was taken on the night of that arrest, and it called into question police tactics.
Are you mocking me?
Hey. Police put on plastic gloves and intervened.
So what do you mean when you say it? Let me see your head. Easy now, easy now, easy now.
Officers attempted to put him in handcuffs, triggering a scuffle. The police body cameras were knocked off. Cox Harsaw shouted as officers struggled to subdue him. Police used a taser, and then a driver stopped and started recording the arrest on his cell phone. Yusef Miller represents the North County Civil Liberties Commission. He says Carlsbad police may change how police body cameras are attached so they don't come off. He says the department is willing to consider a community review board And the department agrees to follow state law, which allows people to get internal disciplinary reports on officers.
Pulling these things together to make sure we look out for the best interests of the community and law enforcement in general. We're going to make sure that we meet in the future with open transparency.
Robert Jenkins of the North County NAACP says he's disappointed that Police Chief Neil Gallucci skipped the meetings, and he thinks the department's training falls short.
We feel in this time of heightened police brutality and racial injustices among people of color, specifically African American men, that racial bias training should be more frequent.
Carlsbad Police said in a statement to KPBS that they will continue to work with the community to discuss police tactics. They say the public's trust is essential. Eric Anderson, KPBS News.
The La Mesa Police Department has released body camera footage from a use of force incident during May's protest that left a grandmother blind in one eye. KPBS reporter Max Rivlin Nadler shows us the video and explains why some are calling it misleading.
The heavily edited video released by the La Mesa Police Department on the city's YouTube page shows Detective Eric Knudsen taking aim at 59-year-old Leslie Furcron. He hits her with a beanbag round in the face, and she crumbles to the ground. From almost 100 yards away, Knudsen identifies Furcron as male.
That was the guy who's throwing things. The guy who's down right now, he's the one who's throwing things.
The video also features body camera footage from much earlier in the day, when rocks were being thrown at La Mesa police officers and San Diego County sheriff's deputies. The video says Detective Knudsen shot at Furcron because she threw an object at sheriff's deputies who were on the other side of the parking lot in front of the police station. In a message released alongside the body camera footage, La Mesa Police Chief Walt Vasquez says the department's thoughts are with Miss Furcron.
That I continue to pray for Miss Furcron in hopes that she continues to heal and makes a full recovery with her family at home.
Furcron's attorney, Dante Pride, says that La Mesa police only released the body camera footage in response to Furcron's ongoing civil lawsuit against the city, and that the video is trying to create a narrative that officers were shooting at protesters in self-defense.
Never have I received something like the La Mesa Police Department produced. What they produced was a cinematic production put together by a PR person to try and paint a picture that the use of force against Ms. Furcron was justified.
Pride says that by that time of day, after law enforcement had cleared the parking lot in front of the police department using tear gas, Detective Knudsen should have been able to determine whether he or any other officer was in direct danger from Ms. Furcron.
From the time you see her make a throwing motion, that's what it looks like from the video, to the time he shoots her, it's like 5 entire seconds of nothing, of time for him to reflect, time for him to decide, I shouldn't use this force on this person. If I believe this person broke a law, I should identify that person and have them contacted by someone in the parking lot. But instead, he decided to just fire his weapon, which I think is against police policy.
Pride says Furcron still has not regained sight in her left eye and must use home health aides to assist her. Detective Knudsen has been placed on paid administrative leave, while the incident remains under investigation by the La Mesa Police Department and the San Diego District Attorney. Max Rivlin-Nadler, KPBS News.
A La Mesa business damaged by looters following protests reopened today to a line down the block. Play It Again Sports had been closed since March because of the pandemic. A lot of the store's fixtures needed replacing along with the inventory, but the owner says the community helped rebuild and show its true colors.
I was not happy. I was upset that night for sure. Like you said, just so much had been put into the store, and for it to all just kind of be, I felt like taken away right at that moment. It hurt. Clearly the real La Mesa is what we saw after May 30th, and we're proud to be part of it.
Dan Buxton says he wants to thank those who helped him reopen. Congress is demanding the VA be held accountable after reports of high rates of sexual harassment among patients and staff. KPBS military reporter Steve Walsh says local women veterans have pushed for action.
A GAO audit released this week says nearly 1 out of 4 VA employees say they've been subjected to unwanted sexual comments or harassment. A VA study found similar patterns among women patients at the VA. The acting deputy head of the VA, Pam Powers, told a House subcommittee on women veterans that the VA is trying to change.
The problem at hand is sexual assault and sexual harassment. And we want to make sure that this organization has a zero tolerance policy. We have a very targeted effort.
Paula Kemp, a Navy veteran, founded Veteran Sisters to help women navigate the VA after her experience at the VA in San Diego County.
It's taken years and years and years for anybody to listen. And it gets brushed off onto the female. Well, what'd you do? What were you wearing? What'd you say? It's always put onto her. And that's not the way it should be. She should be taken seriously.
Kemp tried to report her doctor in Oceanside who was contracted by the VA. Initially, the VA didn't follow through until 4 other patients came forward. In 2019, Dr. Edgar Manzanera pleaded guilty to sexual exploitation and was forced to surrender his medical license.
We're the fastest growing population in the military too. So they've got to get ready and create a program that is going to be more sensitive to the female veteran unique issues.
Aside from taking sexual assault more seriously, she says the VA needs more women providers and programs that allow female vets to receive treatment away from their male counterparts. Steve Walsh, KPBS News.
Another 1.4 million Americans filed for unemployment last week, the first increase since late March. Making matters worse, an extra $600 in weekly unemployment benefits is expiring. It was part of Congress's $2 trillion relief package. Today, Senate Republicans unveiled a $1 trillion plan that would replace the $600 with an amount that would bring benefits to 70% of a laid-off worker's previous income. Also included another round of stimulus checks and additional funding for schools. And with in-class learning in brick-and-mortar schools on pause, school-aged children will inevitably be schooled at home in the fall. But school at home and homeschool are 2 different options for parents to consider. We hear the words homeschooling and virtual learning a lot these days. Both models of learning are done at home, but that's where the similarities end.
There's flexibility and more choice in homeschool.
Claire Roush-Bennett taught high school in the public school system and now works for a public charter school while homeschooling her own 2 children. She says many parents she's talked to felt their kids didn't do well in the virtual learning environment.
The reality is that some kids don't do well on computers for a long period of time. Some parents are learning more about homeschooling and seeing that there is a lot more flexibility and different curriculum options.
She says many parents express their desire to get their kids off computers and limit screen time, which would be impossible to do with virtual learning, where lessons are led by school teachers via Zoom, as opposed to a parent teaching from textbooks. What also draws a lot of parents is the looser structure compared to the rigid schedule of virtual learning.
There's still that lack of flexibility because they're following this bell schedule, right? Like, okay, you're going to come and you're going to do ELA here, and then you're going to take a break and come back. Whereas in homeschool, you do it when it works in your day, or sometimes you do it on the weekends.
She says with kids learning at home, this would be a good opportunity for public schools to re-examine traditional learning.
Schools need to get better at personalizing learning and just not imagining school as a classroom with 4 walls. I think that school will change forever. This is going to force the school system to become more creative and more flexible, and I hope it does because it's what we need.
Roush-Bennett says with the new interest in homeschooling, charter schools are seeing an influx with longer than usual wait lists. She says that is in large part due to a new state funding policy that, while it freezes and protects funds in district schools, doesn't allow those funds to move with students leaving to join charters as homeschoolers.
So that's forcing parents now into another decision that they may not have wanted, which is to homeschool privately.
Private instruction without the oversight of a charter school may be more daunting for inexperienced homeschool parents. And a petition is currently in circulation asking Governor Newsom to restore per-pupil funding for all schools. Comic-Con fans are getting their geek on at home instead of downtown San Diego this year. KPBS reporter Matt Hoffman shows us what that means for businesses.
They really take over Gaslamp Quarter, and Gaslamp becomes the focus of Comic-Con, and everyone who wants to be seen is up and down Fifth Avenue.
But with coronavirus showing no signs of slowing down in San Diego, the convention that brings in more than 100,000 visitors and $150 million in revenue isn't happening this year.
It's been a challenging summer for sure.
Not only is the in-person Comic-Con event not happening this year at the convention center, but all the outside activations that many love and are free around the Gaslamp are also canceled.
Media companies come down and rent out spaces in the Gaslamp Quarter, take over restaurants, take over parking lots, build activations.
The loss of Comic-Con and other conventions, combined with restrictions prohibiting indoor dining, has business owners feeling the heat.
5 years in a row, we've set record numbers during Comic-Con. The last 5 years in a row, we've had record months in July.
Some business owners are estimating sales this week will be down as much as 90% compared to a normal Comic-Con week.
Yeah, I would say that not having Comic-Con isn't going to make or break us. Obviously, it's usually the best month of the year for us, the best week of the year for us. Right now, I mean, it would be nice to have it, but there's so many other things going on with the restrictions.
La Puerta off 4th Avenue in the Gaslamp has been a nearly 100% dine-in business for the last 12 years or so. The pandemic has forced them to pivot.
The restaurants that are really good at takeout don't do a lot of dine-in. The restaurants that are really good at dine-in don't do a lot of takeout. Before it was, 5% of our business throughout the year. And now it's 30%, and it's just completely different.
La Puerta did work with the city to set up this outdoor dining experience, and just a block over on 5th Avenue, the street is getting ready to close, part of a push to allow restaurants to expand their seating into the streets. With outdoor dining only allowed right now, the program has been a lifesaver for businesses.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, some restaurants actually get more space being outside than they have inside. So almost every restaurant up and down Fifth Avenue is participating.
For now, Fifth Avenue will be closed weekly from Thursday through Sunday to allow for on-street dining.
Great ambiance for people to come down to the Gaslamp Quarter. Not like Comic-Con, of course. We'll weather the storm, and Comic-Con will be back, and we'll be ready to have them when this is all over.
For those coming down for this sidewalk and street dining experience, remember face coverings are required except for when sitting at a table. Matt Hoffman, KPBS News.
The boys of summer are finally playing ball. Major League Baseball's shortened 60-game season got underway today. While fans can't attend games, about 4,500 cardboard cutouts decorated the stands at Dodger Stadium. The Padres open up tomorrow against the Diamondbacks at Petco Park. As for the weather, well, here's Jeff Cornish with your forecast.
Well, we do have some pretty decent weather here in Southern California. We have a little bit more robust coastal clouds, a little more persistent in the way of these marine clouds that come in the morning, and sometimes they burn off by late morning. Other times, like the pattern we're in currently, they've been a little more tenacious, and they've been holding on into the afternoon at times along certain parts of the Southern California coast. So that's what we're going to hold on to here over the next few days. Those low clouds near the coast, especially in the morning, may last just a couple hours longer than normal, and that's helping to keep our temperatures down a bit for the coast as well. Meanwhile, the inland areas are dealing with the typical July heat. Nothing off the charts, but it is a warm time, and it gets certainly hot if you head farther east. So those low clouds will be moving in, and they're making it a few miles farther inland in some cases than normal, and they're holding on pretty tough into the daytime hours. 52 in Ramona, 62 in El Cajon, 64 to San Diego, and there's the hot spot. Warm night tonight into Borrego Springs at 72 degrees for the low. Into the day tomorrow, 106 in Borrego Springs, 84 in El Cajon, Escondido around 81, and low to mid-70s for the coastline. Not bad out there by any stretch of the imagination. We are seeing a pretty good surge of moisture moving into the Four Corners region that has been causing some flood concerns, flash flooding, especially areas around Tucson, near where that Bighorn fire was earlier in the summer. That's been a big problem, and those burn scar areas are at great risk of flash flooding. Not our issue locally, but it is something at least on a regional perspective. Into the weekend, we'll be watching what becomes Tropical Storm Hannah moving inland into Texas. For us, pleasantly warm across the inland. You get into the deserts, it's more than pleasant. It's hot out there. For the coast, though, Mid-70s into the upper 70s, not bad out there. A little more humid, a hint of humidity into Monday and Tuesday. Inland areas, low to eventually mid-80s, a slight warming trend here. Mountainous areas pinned in the 70s for the most part. Then Tuesday we may climb to 80 with a good deal of sun. And our friends in the desert sweating it out. It's July. There's a gradual crescendo to the temperatures, building up to 111. The heat returns on Tuesday. And 106, that's heat as well, but it's going to get hotter in the days to come. I'm meteorologist Jeff Cornish for KPBS News.
The Justice Department says it will review the conduct of federal agents who responded to unrest in Portland, Oregon and Washington, D.C. Last night, Portland Mayor Ted Wheeler, a Democrat, was among those tear-gassed by agents outside a federal courthouse. They were dispatched by President Trump to end the unrest. Wheeler has been criticized for not defunding the local police and for not assigning Portland police to protect protesters from federal agents. Activists have been calling on San Diego City leaders to cut the police budget and give more money to libraries, parks, and mental health services. But as KPBS Metro reporter Andrew Bowen explains, even when its funding is cut, SDPD has a track record of overspending.
On May 31st, thousands of San Diegans gathered in downtown San Diego to protest the killing of George Floyd by a Minneapolis police officer. That afternoon and evening, police declared an unlawful assembly and used tear gas, stun grenades, and pepper balls to disperse the crowds. Protesters said that escalated an otherwise peaceful demonstration, while police say it was necessary to secure the area. Either way, it was an expensive day for city taxpayers. In the following days and weeks, police racked up more than 100,000 hours of overtime responding to protests. By mid-June, SDPD had blown past its overtime budget by more than $11 million, and the overspending is not a fluke. A KPBS review of city budgets and financial reports found SDPD has spent beyond its overtime budget in all of the past 10 fiscal years. Together, the decade of overspending totals more than $61 million.
Our office has raised concerns with police overtime exceeding budgeted levels quite consistently.
Baku Patel is a fiscal and policy analyst with the Independent Budget Analyst's Office.
All departments have a responsibility to spend within their budget, including the police department. Police department is a little unique because especially the use of overtime, if there's an emergency or a public safety issue that needs to be addressed, typically that's done through overtime.
Some overtime pay is also mandatory. Officers are guaranteed overtime when they work on holidays, for example, or have to appear in court. But the biggest portion of the police overtime budget is discretionary, when police captains allow officers to work beyond their regular 8 hours.
We have to be honest about where the desire for policing comes from.
Kira Green is executive director of the progressive think tank Center on Policy Initiatives. Police have justified extending shifts into overtime by saying the department is understaffed. Green disagrees and says the use of overtime reflects the over-policing of some San Diego neighborhoods.
It's always the case that policing is racialized. And so as this city has become more people of color, we've heard a call for more policing. And that's not going to solve our problems. It actually is our problem. It is, if you talk to communities of color about whether police make them feel safe, that's not what you hear.
Green says SDPD's consistent overspending on overtime could mean one of two things. Either all the mayors and police chiefs over the past decade have been really bad at predicting how much the department would need to spend on overtime, or
what we think is more true is that this is an intentional decision not to be upfront about the cost that we're putting into policing and to do at the front end of the budget cuts in all kinds of programs under the argument that there's not enough money, and then on the back end of the budget to put that money back into policing.
SDPD declined our request for an interview and refused to respond to written questions about overtime spending. Council President Georgette Gomez says the police budget does need more scrutiny. To that end, she and Councilmember Monica Montgomery commissioned a deep dive report into police spending so the council can find areas to cut responsibly.
So when we are having the budget discussion and the budget allocations, we can actually make decisions based on that information versus when we're in official budget hearings. It makes it hard because a lot of the information is coming at us very, very quickly, but also at times very late.
Despite a flood of calls to cut the police budget, council members last month approved Mayor Kevin Faulconer's proposal to increase it by about 5% to $566 million. The police overtime budget also went up to about $34 million. But in an effort to crack down on overspending, the council is also requiring SDPD to provide a detailed account of overtime use as soon as half of the budget is exhausted. Councilmember Chris Ward, who cast the only vote against the budget, says this is the level of oversight needed right now.
And I think that what you're hearing from many council representatives is an increased interest in engaging directly with police operations and with the police budget itself to be a little more transparent and clear about what it is we're doing, how we're spending it, and what other alternatives might be out there for consideration.
The deep dive report on SDPD's budget is expected sometime in the late summer or fall. Andrew Bowen, KPBS News.
And tomorrow we'll take a look at the calls to shift police dollars to mental health funding. A call out is being made for plasma. The San Diego Blood Bank is asking for convalescent plasma donations from patients who have recovered from COVID-19. Although not a cure for the virus, the plasma has proven to be effective for some patients. To donate, you must have had a positive test, recovered, and be symptom-free for 28 days. And you can find tonight's stories on our website, kpbs.org/evening edition. Thank you for joining us. I'm Maya Trabulsi. Have a great evening.
Major funding for KPBS Evening Edition has been made possible in part by Anderson Plumbing, Heating and Air, proud to support the mission of KPBS and privileged to serve San Diego clients. Anderson Plumbing, Heating and Air, helping homeowners maintain drain, heating, and cooling systems since 1978. And by the Conrad Prebys Foundation, Darlene Marcos Shiley. And by the following: and by viewers like you. Thank you.